It's safe to say that wokeness is officially dead. Protests are now popping up all over the world in regards to illegal immigration, these illegal migrants, these fake asylum seekers that have just been destroying communities, attacking women, murdering children, burning buildings, taking over houses. Really, the list of crimes that have been happening on a global scale are almost unimaginable, and people have had enough. The Illuminati, the powers that be, the deep state, whatever you want to call them, they are desperate. They're pushing the bounds for this further than any human in their right mind ever would. But they have to. Right now, we're in a position where the deep state is actually being challenged. We are in a position to actually drain the swamp. James Bolton was the first domino. The Mexican cartels, the Venezuelan cartels that Trump is going after, that's the second domino. The third domino is calling out Islam. The fourth domino will be calling out Israel, which that's going to be a whole separate can of worms. The elites need these illegals to take over our populations. They have MK Ultra psyop people into not having children. The only way that they can sustain power and sustain their voter blocks is by importing people from third world countries. They're totally willing to destroy what we are. They would rather rule over ashes than to have an empire of free thinking people. We are the biggest threat to the Illuminati, these vampire pedophiles that genuinely are just preying on the innocent. So I got this article here, and actually I pulled up a few. UK migrant protests spark angry confrontations as government scrambles to respond. So there's been a lot of protests happening in the United Kingdom, Ireland, Australia, United States, Mexico, all over the world. And there's been similar reasons for this. In Ireland, not too long ago, there was a woman who was attacked. There's been multiple instances of children being attacked. Right here, the reason that these recent protests are happening in London are literally because a 14-year-old girl was sexually assaulted by one of these illegals that are being forced onto us. People aren't okay with giving up their culture, and people really aren't okay with putting their kids in danger. So, the latest round of demonstrations followed weeks of protest outside the Bell Hotel in Epping on the outskirts of London after a hotel resident allegedly tried to kiss a 14-year-old girl and was charged with sexual assault. The man has denied the accusation and is due to stand trial later this month. Now, look, I'm not for people being falsely accused. Me Too was a whole issue in and of itself. So, we do want to have evidence that this took place. But it cannot be a coincidence that we're getting so many different reports so recently that these illegals, these false asylum seekers, whatever you want to call them, I'm going to stick with illegals, that they are doing predatory acts, especially the children. Now, it's obvious that they would be attacking men and, adults, but children, that should really get your blood boiling. That's a different level of evil. And if you guys want to play this DMCA 5 game where everything's on a spectrum, the spectrum of evil, attacking a 14-year-old girl is near the top. So, Epping Forest District Council won a temporary injunction to shut down the hotel because of, quote, unprecedented levels of protest and disruption, end quote, which had led to several arrests. Because in the UK, and just like most of the world, free speech does not exist. They tried to pretend for a little bit that free speech had become this universal idea, and that's sort of how the left has been able to levy these hate speech laws all over the world, including in some American cities like New York. They're not as extreme as what's happening in London. If you follow my Facebook, I share reels all the time where I essentially expose the deep evils of these foreign governments, especially the hate speech. I expose a lot of different truths, but there was recently a woman with a baby who got arrested because she was not pro Palestine, essentially. It's a little bit of a simplification, but this is happening all the time. Mothers are being ripped from their children. Children are growing up in orphanages because of speech violations. So, the High Court decision Tuesday in favor of the council, which the government wants to appeal, inspired anti migrant demonstrations gathering under the banner of Abolish Asylum System to protest over the weekend. The group Stand Up to Racism rallied counter protesters. It is not racism to be against people that don't like your culture coming, invading, and destroying everything that you stand for. That is not racism. If you want to call this racism, then you're killing the word. It it has a meaning. It is deeper than just some nationalistic idea. These people love to reference anything that is essentially a nationalistic position as racist because they love to bring everything back to Hitler, which was a left-wing socialist that wanted everything that the left wanted. They need to understand. But it's not just there. Anti migration protesters released alarming manifesto ahead of rallies in cities across Australia. They're about to have more protests in Australia. Right here. Mexico City unveils plan to tackle gentrification after mass protests. Because everybody is tired of this. It doesn't matter if we're in Mexico and you have Venezuelans invading. It doesn't matter if in Dearborn and you have Israelis or Muslims or any of these people. If they don't represent our culture, they cannot be here. It is so important that people have at least some commonality. Before, when people would come here, when people were settling this land, when we were actually a country of common ideas, people came here with grit. They came here knowing that it was going to take hard work, determination, and they would be a part of something bigger than themselves. This is a bunch of people coming here and expecting the people that have already done that to take care of them. That is not how this works. The elites really want to destroy the culture because without culture, there is no solidarity. There is nothing to fight back against. There is no structure for people to have a voice. If community and culture is like a union to a workplace, there is no more centralized ideas. Everybody is going into their own echo chamber from the algorithm. Everybody is in a position now where your mainstream is different than my mainstream and is different than Joe Blow's mainstream. We used to have shows that we would watch. We would all watch Breaking Bad. We would all watch Game of Thrones. We all listened to the new Drake album or Lil Wayne. Now, everything is being separated. Everything is being divided. And if you divide, you can conquer. And how many more millions of people need to be upset about this before we convince the left that we're not just racist? Well, I'll answer that. We will never. The left does not want peace. They do not see a future where we are able to coincide and get along. What they want and what they need is for us to die. And their attempt is to destroy us any way possible. Convince us not to have kids, convince people not to buy houses, convince people not to move into better places, convince people to take jobs that aren't good for them. This is a war against the human mind, the human spirit, and our autonomy as people. Following this is going to be the ID verifications online. It's going to be debanking processes based on what you post. Things are going to get really bad if we don't stand up to this right now. All right. I just really wanted to touch on this really quickly since it seems like these protests are about to ramp up all over again. I thought June and July were already crazy and we're going to have a little bit of a break, but that didn't last for more than a couple of weeks. If you enjoy my content, like, comment, subscribe. I just started a Patreon. So if you go to patreon.com/Brian D exclusive, that's BRYAND exclusive, you can show some support. I have a couple of different tier options there. It gives you the option to contribute to the channel. So you could, ask me questions that I can read at the end of my videos, which I'm very much looking forward to. I'm not sure how long it'll take before I can do that consistently, but I would love to have you guys just ask me relevant questions about politics or my ideas on things. You can also contribute with the second tier by giving me story ideas. If there's something happening in your local area and you think that it would be worth touching on, or at least having me aware of it so I can have a more informed opinion. This gives you the option to help contribute to the channel in a major way. You can also just donate to me on Cash App at Brian D Exclusive. And yeah, I guess before I even get off of here, I really just want to say, don't be afraid to tell people the truth. This stuff only happens because good people are afraid to make people uncomfortable. We need to be able to stand up to this. Don't let the bully win. This is about our American spirit. This is about the human right of existing. And the more that this happens, the less that exists. I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.